Crimson Court had been built to remind mortals of two things: that beauty could be lethal, and that survival was never accidental. Isidora Valentine felt both truths the moment she crossed the threshold. The doors closed behind her with a sound too soft to be honest. Velvet and iron. Silk wrapped around a blade. The chandeliers above glowed with captive witchlight. White, steady, cold, and the marble floor beneath her slippers reflected her pale face back at her in fractured pieces. She was overdressed for a merchant's daughter and underarmed for a den of predators. Her father strode ahead, back straight, voice already loud. He believed noise equaled power. He believed that because it had worked in human halls, with human men who could be bullied, bargained with, frightened into compromise. The vampires did not look frightened. They looked entertained. They stood and sat in carefully spaced clusters, tall figures in tailored black and deep wine velvet, jeweled fingers resting on goblets that steamed faintly with heat. Some smiled with mouths too still. Others watched without blinking at all. Isidora's skin prickled. Garden of carnivores, she thought dimly, all pretending the roses aren't made of bone. A woman brushed past her, close enough that Isidora caught the scent of crushed violets and copper. The vampire inclined her head politely, eyes flicking to Isidora's throat. Assessing, measuring, betting. Her father cleared his throat. "High Lord Aramis of House Aramis," he announced, as if volume might force respect. "We come to negotiate the Valentine shipping delay. There's been interference from you," someone murmured pleasantly. Laughter rippled, soft, refined, delighted. Isidora followed her father's gaze to the dais. Lord Aramis sat alone, not enthroned, not lounging, waiting. He was tall, even seated, long-limbed and composed. Dark hair bound at his nape with a simple clasp of obsidian. His skin caught the witchlight like polished marble, flawless and cool. And his eyes, her breath snagged. They were not red. They were something worse. Silver dark, reflective, as if they had learned how to mimic humanity without ever belonging to it. Eyes that had watched centuries pass and found them wanting. He was beautiful in a way that made her uncomfortable. Not soft beauty, not comforting beauty, weaponized beauty. And he was looking directly at her. Not with hunger, not yet, with calculation. Her pulse stuttered, traitorous and loud in her ears. She told herself it was fear. It had to be fear. She had grown up hearing stories about vampires, about blood farms, thralls and brides who vanished behind iron gates and were never seen again. Yet something in her chest tightened that had nothing to do with terror. Lord Aramis rose. The court shifted instantly. Goblets lowered. Conversation stilled. Even the air seemed to draw back, as if giving him room to exist. Isidora realized, with a small internal shock, that everyone bowed. Everyone except her. Her father didn't notice. He was still talking. "Our delay was unavoidable," he insisted. "The Trident Guild seized our wagons. We petitioned for redress. We acted within human law." "Human law," Aramis repeated softly. The words were almost kind. ghost. He descended the steps without haste, each movement precise. When he reached them, he stopped an arm's length away from Isidora, close enough that she could see the faint blue vein at his temple, close enough that she could smell him. Cold air, ink, something old and sharp beneath it all. Her body reacted before her mind could stop it. A flush crept up her neck. Her breath went shallow. Aramis noticed. Something flickered. So fast she might have imagined it. A tightening at the corner of his mouth. Not satisfaction. Restraint. You withheld blood grain during a sanctioned siege, he said calmly. 4 convoys. 3 weeks. Her father bristled. We withheld nothing. The grain spoiled in transit. A lie, said a man lounging nearby, smiling broadly. We tasted it. That earned another ripple of laughter. Isidora's stomach twisted. Aramis's gaze never left her face. Blood grain does not spoil, Lord Valentine. It is preserved through ritual, by oath, by magic older than your trade guilds. Her father's face went pale. We did not know. No, Aramis agreed. You did not. He turned slightly, addressing the court. The Valentine house petitioned 3 years ago for expanded trade rights through vampire territory. A woman with crimson lips nodded. It was approved. Under provisional oversight, added another. Under collateral, Aramis finished. Isidora's heart skipped. Collateral. Her father swallowed. That was a formality, a symbolic. A name, Aramis said, and lifted his hand. A vampire footman presented a silver tray instantly. Upon it lay a parchment scroll bound with a black ribbon. Old vellum, old magic. Isidora felt it hum in her bones. Aramis unbound it with one elegant motion and held it where her father could see. Her name burned there in crimson script. Isidora Valentine, collateral asset. Her knees went weak. Her father's mouth opened, closed. She was never meant to be claimed, he said hoarsely, only held in trust until the roots stabilized. And they did not, Aramis said. Your debt compounded, interest accrued. The council called it in. That would ruin us, her father whispered. Aramis's gaze finally shifted to him. It already has. Her father swayed. Isidora reached for him just as his legs gave out. He collapsed against her, heavy and limp. A gasp tore from her throat as she struggled to keep him from striking the marble. Blood trickled from his nose, dark against his skin. Father. The court leaned in as one. Predators scenting weakness. Aramis kneeled with controlled grace and pressed 2 fingers to Lord Valentine's throat. His eyes narrowed slightly. Stress, he said. Fear. Guilt. He pricked his own thumb with a fang. Isidora flinched at the sight. Sharp, white, precise. A bead of blood welled, black-red and luminous. Aramis let it fall onto the parchment. The contract ignited in colour. Crimson sigils raced across the vellum, sealing the magic with a hiss like breath drawn through teeth. Power rolled outward, heavy and final. Isidora felt it settle around her like chains made of silk. "No," she breathed. Aramis rose. "The bond is active," he announced. "Isidora Valentine is forfeit to House Aramis." Her father jerked awake with a strangled sound. "Isidora! Run!" She couldn't move. The doors slammed open. Steel rang. "Get away from her!" Sir Edmund Talford charged into the court, sword drawn, face flushed with fury and fear, golden hair dishevelled, eyes locked on Aramis with blind hatred. "Monster!" Edmund snarled. "Release her, or I'll—" He lunged. Isidora screamed. The blade arced toward Aramis's throat. He did not move. The sword stopped. An inch from his skin. Edmund strained, muscles shaking. His face went red with effort. "Fight me." Aramis regarded the blade calmly. Then he looked at Isidora. Something passed between them. A silent calculation. He stepped past Edmund, letting the sword scrape harmlessly against his shoulder. A deliberate insult. "You draw steel in my court," Aramis said mildly. "You spill blood without permission. Do you understand what you've done?" Edmund laughed, wild. "I'll kill you before you touch her." Aramis's voice cooled by a single degree. Touch her? He turned to fully face Isidora now, close enough that she felt the chill of him, the controlled power coiled beneath his skin. "Marriage," he said, addressing the court, "constitutes containment." Murmurs erupted throughout the space. Containment? A mortal bride. Risky. Fascinating. Aramis lifted his hand again. Silence fell. "I will not feed from her," he said. "I will not consummate the bond. She will be housed, protected, and educated in vampire lore until the debt is resolved." Isidora stared at him, breath trembling. Distance. Cold restraint. It frightened her more than hunger would have. Her father sobbed. "Please. She doesn't understand." Aramis's gaze snapped to him. "If she refuses, you die." The words were quiet, absolute. Isidora's blood turned to ice. Edmund roared and surged forward again. This time, Aramis moved. He caught Edmund's wrist, twisted, and the sword clattered to the floor. Fangs flashed. So fast, so close to Edmund's throat that Isidora tasted copper on her tongue. "Another step," Aramis said softly, "and I will take your heart out in front of her. Slowly. Legally." Edmund froze. Isidora's chest burned. "Stop. Please." Aramis released Edmund and turned back to her. He offered his hand. Not tender. Not cruel. Final. "Isidora Valentine," he said, "you will marry me, or your father will not leave this room alive." Her breath shook. Her fiancé stared at her, betrayal and terror warring in his eyes. The court watched, beautiful and patient and hungry. Isidora took Aramis's hand. It was cold, and somehow steady. The estate of House Aramis did not loom. It did not snarl or bare its teeth. It waited. Black stone rose from the cliffside like a thought made solid, precise, symmetrical, disciplined. No gargoyles, no ornamentation, just sharp lines and tall windows of something dark and translucent that caught the moonlight and bled it back in crimson hues. Isidora Valentine stared as the carriage slowed. "Blood glass?" murmured the guard seated across from her. "Forged under oath, reinforced with sigils, unbreakable unless invited." "Invited by whom?" she asked quietly. The guard smiled, polite and empty. "The master of the house." The gates opened without a sound. Inside, everything was immaculate. The floors gleamed like frozen water. The air smelled faintly of iron and winter roses. Light refracted through the blood-glass walls, painting the corridors in shades of red, so dark they were almost black. Isidora's footsteps echoed. She felt exposed in the silence, every breath too loud, every swallow a betrayal. She had expected chains, cells, a bridal chamber with a bed meant for feeding. Instead, she was escorted with formal courtesy. No one touched her. No one smiled too widely. That frightened her more than cruelty would have. Her rooms were spare but elegant. Stone walls softened by dark tapestries. A bed dressed in black linen. A single chair positioned precisely near a tall blood-glass window overlooking the cliff and the endless dark below. A door stood opposite the bed. Thick, reinforced, locked. "This is Lord Aramis's private wing," said the attendant. "He will not enter uninvited." Isidora's heart twisted. "Why?" The attendant tilted his head. "Because he is not a fool." The door closed. The lock slid home with a sound like judgment. Isidora sank onto the edge of the bed, fingers curling into the linen. Married, she thought, and untouched. The court had not been kind about that. She learned quickly that gossip travelled faster among vampires than blood did. At dinner the next evening, served in a long, narrow hall lined with blood-glass panels and multiple tables, she felt the weight of their gazes, the polite curiosity, the veiled contempt. "A bride unbitten," one woman murmured delicately. "How quaint," another mocked. "How dangerous." Still another purred. Isidora sat at the far end of the table set upon the dais. Aramis sat at the other. Though the vampire lord sat with his new bride at a table that afforded them privacy, the distance between them was deliberate. He did not look at her while she ate. He did not eat at all. The silence stretched. Finally she spoke. "If you intend to let them kill me, you could at least say so." Several nearby vampires froze. Aramis lifted his gaze slowly. Silver dark eyes met hers. "No one will touch you without my leave," he said evenly. "That's not the same as safety," she replied. A corner of his mouth twitched. "You're learning." She pushed her plate away. Appetite gone. "Why won't you feed from me?" A ripple of interest moved through the table. Aramis rose. The chair scraped softly against the marble floor. "Dinner is concluded," he announced. The vampires stood as one, smiles tight with anticipation. Isidora followed him down a corridor afterward, pulse racing. She hadn't realized he intended to speak to her privately until Aramis stopped outside her chamber. He did not reach for her. The restraint was deliberate. Isidora stood just inside the threshold, heart racing, aware of the exact distance between them. One step closer, and she would be within reach of him. One step back, and she would be sealed away in her chamber again. "You're keeping me alive," she whispered, "but you're not telling me why someone wants me dead." Aramis turned slightly, as if ensuring the corridor was empty. The blood-glass panels along the walls reflected them back in dark red fragments, bride and lord, separated by air and intention. "Because your mother's bloodline never went quiet," he said. Isidora's breath caught. "My mother was human. She carried no magic." "So she believed," he replied. "And so did your father. That belief kept you alive." She shook her head. "You said I was collateral, a debt." "Yes." "That's not the same as or a reason for a death sentence." "No," Aramis agreed, "but you are also a contingency." She stared at him. "For what?" "For the collapse of houses," he said calmly. "For rebellion. For binding or dissolving ancient oaths." The words felt too large to fit inside her body. "They want to kill me before you use me," she whispered. "Yes." Her voice trembled. "Who?" "One counselor in particular," Aramis said. "He prefers power to remain abstract. Your bloodline is inconveniently embodied in magical binding." She swallowed hard. "And what of my father?" "Used you because he believed the collateral clause would never be enforced," Aramis said. "He believed I would take coin, or territory, or blood." "And not a bride," she murmured. "And not a bride." He confirmed. Silence stretched between them. "Is this marriage permanent?" Isidora asked. Aramis did not answer immediately. "Yes," he said at last. The word settled like a brand. "Then why?" she asked carefully. "Won't you consummate it?" His jaw tightened. "Because permanence cuts both ways," he said, "and I will not give the court proof of weakness they are already searching for." She studied him. "You think feeding from me would be seen as weakness?" "I know it would," he said. "Why?" "Because it would bind you to me in such a way that I would not survive losing you." The honesty stunned her. Aramis stepped back. "You will dine with the court once again tomorrow," he said. "Learn the faces. Learn the etiquette. Survival depends on both." He left her standing there, blood humming beneath her skin. Later that evening, the knock came at midnight. Not loud, not demanding. Isidora opened the inner door across from her bed and stopped at the threshold. The outer barrier of reinforced iron remained locked. Aramis stood on the other side of it, closer than before. "Someone tested the wards," he said quietly. Her pulse spiked. "Here? At the estate?" "Yes." "Did they get inside?" "No." She hesitated, then asked, "Was anyone hurt?" A pause. "Yes." She shut her eyes in dread. "Because of me." "Because of the court," Aramis corrected. "Do not take the blame for their appetite for power and control." She stepped closer to the door, forehead resting against the cool iron. "I don't know how to survive this with my sanity intact." "You listen," he said. "You observe. You do not trust smiles." A soft sound escaped her. Half laugh, half breath. "Is that how you survive?" she asked. "Yes." "And what did it cost you?" Silence. "Then, everything I did not guard. Never allow yourself to be alone with one of them, even if they are not part of this current plot to kill you. None of them would miss the possibility of wounding me through you, if they thought they could get away with it." Her fingers curled against the door. "If this marriage is permanent," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "and you believe I will not survive without knowledge, then why keep this distance?" His hand rose. She felt it through the iron before she saw it, his palm settling opposite hers, heatless and restrained. "Because distance," Aramis said, voice strained, "is the last thing I can still control." Her breath shuddered. "Do you want me?" she asked, the fear real and present. "Yes." The word was quiet. "And you're denying yourself because if I cross that line," he said, "I will not step back from murdering my own for you. And the court will not forgive it." Her heart pounded. "Neither will I," she whispered. His breath hitched. He stepped away. Several nights later, the scream cut the night short. Isidora woke upright, pulse roaring, the sound already fading. By morning, the estate hummed with polite horror as she walked through the gathering rooms, smiling coldly but politely at her husband's gathered court. "An accident," someone murmured. "A servant unfamiliar with the boundaries," one surmised. "How unfortunate," another mocked, not meaning it. Aramis did not correct them. When Isidora confronted him later, voice shaking from sleep and dread, he stood at the far side of the study, hands clasped behind his back, posture immaculate. A wall of blood glass fractured his reflection into red and silver shards. "Someone was killed," Isidora said. "Here, because of me." Aramis didn't look surprised. "Several someones have been killed because of you. Tonight merely made it visible to the rest of the court." Her throat tightened. "Stop being elegant about it." That earned the faintest shift. An exhale that might have been a laugh in a man with less discipline. "They wanted to know how far they could reach," he said, turning toward her at last. How far did they? She pressed. He crossed the room, unhurried. Vampires didn't rush. They didn't need to. When he stopped before her, she had to tilt her chin up to meet his gaze. Aramis took her hand, not possessively, not gently, but with the precision of someone examining a weapon he intended to return to the armory. "Well?" she asked, pulse hammering against his palm. "Well, I reminded them where the edges are," he said. She stared at him, searching his face. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Aramis continued, thumb brushing the inside of her wrist where her blood throbbed. "I allowed them to glimpse consequence without granting them the satisfaction of spectacle." The words chilled her. But it was just a servant following. "It wasn't just a servant," Aramis replied. "He belonged to Councillor Vexim, a proxy, disposable." She swallowed hard. So he was sent to die. "He was sent to test me." Aramis's voice cooled. "Vexim wanted proof I would defend you myself rather than delegate. Defense implies value. Value implies leverage." Her stomach twisted. Leverage implies motive. Precisely. She tried to pull her hand back. He didn't stop her. He didn't need to. She didn't complete the motion. "What is Vexim's motive?" she whispered. "Control of the Blood Council," Aramis said. "Your death would destabilize 3 houses and unseat 1. Your survival binds those houses instead. He does not appreciate being bound." Isidora swallowed. "So he's trying to kill me to win some sort of political vote. To win an empire." Aramis corrected softly. "Votes are merely the choreography." The air between them thickened. "You make it sound inevitable," she murmured. "My death?" "It is. Everything dies, eventually." He paused, head inclining a fraction. But inevitability and their victory are not the same. Her breath caught. "Why tell me any of this?" "Because you are not a child," Aramis said. "And I will not have you die like one, confused and uninformed." His thumb traced a slow path up to the base of her palm, a gesture so restrained it felt obscene. "My patience," he said, voice lowering, "is not infinite. Vexim has been reminded of that." She looked up at him, startled. "You threatened him." Aramis's mouth curved, not in a smile. Something darker. Threats are unnecessary when one has imagination. The words sent a tremor down her spine. "You're dangerous," she breathed. "I was dangerous before you arrived," he replied. "Now I am merely motivated." Her heartbeat stumbled. "Because of the debt?" His gaze held hers for a long beat. "Too long." "Because of the permanence." Later that night, she dreamed of blood glass splintering, of silver eyes watching her bleed, of a mouth at her wrist. Reverent, devastating, patient. She woke with her sheets tangled around her bare legs and her pulse racing, unclaimed, but no longer untouched. The summons arrived at dawn, written in blood on vellum so thin it was nearly translucent. It curled on the silver tray like a living thing. Isidora stared at it, heart tight. "The council wants to see me." "No." Aramis's voice was firm, immediate. "They want to measure you." She met his gaze. "Measure me for what?" "Survivability," he said. "Value. Threat." Her stomach twisted. "And if I fail the measurement?" "Then the debt resolves differently." He didn't elaborate. He didn't have to. She touched the vellum, fingers trembling. "Why now?" "Because Vexim pushed," Aramis said, "and because the council enjoys spectacle. They believe desperation sharpens truth." Isidora's pulse thudded. "I'm not desperate." "No," he said, eyes steady. "You are inconveniently calm. It annoys them." She almost laughed. Almost. The next day, the corridors of House Aramis were hushed. Isidora felt it before she saw anything wrong. The stillness stretched too tight, like a breath held too long. Even the blood-glass panels lining the hall had darkened, their crimson sheen muted, as if listening. They were halfway to the throne chamber when the doors at the far end slammed open. "Isidora!" The shout echoed off stone and glass. She spun. Sir Edmund Talford stood between two house guards, wrists bound in blood-glass manacles that pulsed with faint sigils. His chin was lifted in defiance, but the defiance rang hollow. He wore the same blue doublet from the day of the contract, creased now, ill-fitting, hanging loose on a frame thinned by sleepless fear. "Edmund," she whispered. He surged forward as far as the chains allowed. "Dora, don't go through with this. He's lying to you. The council—" One of the guards struck him across the mouth with the back of his gauntlet. The sound cracked through the corridor. Edmund staggered, blood spilling onto the marble. Aramis did not move. Isidora did. "Stop!" she cried. The guard hesitated, just long enough to matter. Edmund spat blood onto the floor and glared at Aramis, rage flaring brighter than fear. "Release her. Take me instead." Isidora froze. Aramis studied him with detached interest, as one might examine a flawed piece of logic. "Interesting," he said. "You're a parasite," Edmund snarled. "You feed on fear and blood and coin. You think she belongs to you because her father signed a page." "She belongs to no one," Aramis said quietly. The words cut sharper than a blade. Edmund blinked. The silence that followed was not of triumph. It was confusion. Isidora swallowed, heart pounding. "Edmund, why are you here?" His face fractured, pride collapsing into desperation, love twisted by panic. "Because I tried to free you." Aramis's head tilted slightly. "Yes, with Councillor Vexim's funding." His voice was colder than the wind blowing in a blizzard. Edmund flinched. Isidora stared at him. "Edmund." What did you do?" He sagged against the chains. "They promised. If I helped them remove Aramis from power, if I testified you were coerced, that we were lovers, they said they'd nullify the contract. They would take you away from him. They said you'd be safe." Her pulse thudded painfully in her ears. "Safe?" she repeated softly. "Or useful to them? Because I would never be safe with them." Edmund couldn't meet her eyes. Silence answered for him. Aramis stepped past Isidora then, placing himself directly in front of Edmund. The difference in their height and stillness turned the moment into something judicial. A sentence awaiting confirmation. "You allied with Vexim," Aramis said, "against a debt marriage, intending to alter the succession of leadership." His voice remained soft. The corridor shivered, sigils flaring briefly along the blood-glass walls, acknowledging the charge. "That," Aramis finished, "is treason." Edmund swallowed hard before snarling out, "Then kill me." Aramis regarded him for a long, clinical moment. "No." Edmund stared, stunned. "I will not give Vexim the satisfaction of your death," Aramis continued, "nor will I remove the last mortal tether Isidora has to the life she believed she would have." Edmund's eyes flicked to Isidora. Shame finally stripped the fight from his voice. "Dora, I failed you." She held his gaze steady, despite the ache tightening her chest. "You tried to save me by handing me over to the ones who want to truly harm me. I am not sure what that is, but it goes beyond failure." The guards tightened their hold. Blood-glass chains chimed softly as Edmund was pulled away down the corridor, his footsteps fading into silence. The sigils along the walls dimmed. Only then did the air seem to move again. Aramis turned back to Isidora. "Are you all right?" he asked, not as a lord, but as a man whose restraint had nearly cracked. She exhaled slowly. "I am now." And for the first time since crossing the threshold of the Crimson Court, she meant it. The council chamber smelled of old stone and ritual blood. 12 seats stood in a crescent, each carved with the sigil of its house. Above them, blood-glass windows caught the sunrise and refracted it into ruby light. Isidora walked beside Aramis through the center aisle. Whispers followed them like perfume. A mortal bride. Untouched, unbitten, unclaimed. Vexim lounged in his seat, long fingers adorned with black rings, smile amused. "Lord Aramis," he drawled, "an unexpected pleasure. And your bride, how fragile she looks." Ignoring Vexim, Aramis didn't bow as he faced the entire council and announced, "You summoned. I am here." A gavel cracked. "Begin," called the high chair. Vexim rose. "We bring forth evidence that House Aramis has overstepped blood law, that he refuses to consummate a bond owed by treaty, that he shelters mortal leverage against the council, and that his bride carries a magical lineage that threatens the balance of power." Gasps rippled. Isidora stiffened. Aramis didn't react. "What lineage?" asked the high chair. Vexim's gaze slid to Isidora. Her mother was no ordinary mortal. The magical power to bind vampire oaths flowed within her.
"That's a lie!"
Isidora exclaimed. Aramis held up a hand to her, cutting off her words. Vexim smirked before continuing. Though it lay dormant within the mother, it is true. But unfortunately, that power did not die with her. It sleeps. Perhaps in the bride, perhaps in a future child. Either would be inconvenient. The word landed like a blade. Isidora's knees weakened. Children, future. This is what Aramis had meant by permanence. Her throat closed. Vexim clapped sharply. Two attendants stepped forward with a covered object. Aramis tensed. The cloth lifted. A blade gleamed beneath, thin as a whisper, carved from blood glass, sigils along the edge pulsing faintly. A ritual blade. No one spoke for 3 heartbeats. Then Vexim smiled. Let us test the bride's blood. Aramis moved. Fast enough the chamber gasped. But before he reached Isidora, something else hit him. Or rather, struck at him. A crossbow bolt screamed through the air, aimed at his heart. Time slowed. Isidora saw the bolt, saw Aramis turn, saw the sigils along the shaft flare with hostile magic. She moved without thinking, hand outstretched, shoving him just enough that the bolt grazed his shoulder instead of piercing his chest. Blood spattered across the marble. The chamber erupted. Guards surged. Nobles shouted. Vexim laughed. Someone drew a blade. Someone else fled before being pursued by the guards. Aramis straightened, his hand pressed to the wound. Silver eyes burning. Isidora stared at her palm, stinging, reddened where the magic kissed her skin. She glared up at Vexim. That wasn't a test. No, Vexim purred quietly. That was an attempt at correction. Aramis's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. The chamber stilled. His gaze landed on Isidora first, not checking for injuries, but searching her eyes, confirming something. Then he turned to the council. You demand consummation, he said. You demand feeding. You demand proof. He stepped toward Vexim, blood slipping down his arm in slow, elegant lines. You wanted spectacle. You shall have witnesses instead. Aramis faced Isidora fully now, close enough she felt his breath cool against her cheek. This will not be gentle, he warned softly. Nor private. Her pulse hammered. Then why do it? Because sometimes survival requires spectacle, he said, and choice requires a witness. She swallowed. Choice? His hand rose, slow, deliberate, and touched her throat with 2 fingers, not demanding, not claiming, reading. Isidora Valentine of House Aramis, he stated formally, voice dropping to something reverent and dangerous at once. Do you offer your blood and power to me, your husband, Aramis III, Lord of House Aramis and ruler of the vampire nation? and to no other, freely and of your own will. Heat flooded her chest. Fear, desire, understanding. Yes, she whispered. The council inhaled as one. Aramis lowered his mouth to her wrist, not biting, not yet, lips brushing skin so lightly she shivered. Last refusal, he murmured, his silver-coloured eyes meeting hers. She nodded. He opened her skin with his fangs. Not violent, not rushed. Precise. The sensation stole her breath, a shock of cold, then heat, then something deeper that curled low in her spine like pleasure reframed as surrender. Her blood touched his tongue. Aramis's eyes went incandescent. Silver moonlight lit from within. The chamber watched in stunned, horrified, fascinated silence. He drank only once, then withdrew, restraint made erotic by the fact that it obviously hurt him to stop. But the point was made. Isidora swayed. He caught her, one hand at her back, the other still bloody. Permanence, he said softly, only for her. She looked up at him. Is it enough? More than enough, Aramis whispered. Too much. Aramis turned to the council. By blood law, he said, voice unwavering, the bride is not collateral. She has offered and been accepted. The choice has been made. The debt is hereby dissolved. Vexim snarled. You cannot! Aramis growled dangerously, baring his fangs in his direction. Isidora moved before she could think, snatching the ritual blade still lying on the tray and cutting her palm, and then pressed her bleeding hand to Aramis's mouth. Gasps cracked through the chamber like lightning. Blood smeared against his lips, and he drank from the cut, calming his fury. His eyes closed in ecstasy. A sound escaped him, part growl, part prayer, part ecstasy. Power rolled through the hall, calling to every vampire noble in attendance. The high chair slammed the gavel. Record the bond. A scribe dragged the blood contract into view. Sigils ignited. Names burned. Aramis, Isidora Valentine, permanent bond, irreversible. The council stood. Even Vexim did, slowly, grudgingly. The scribe's voice carried, by record of blood and witnesses, the house Aramis bond is sealed, irreversible. Isidora's breath trembled. Irreversible. She felt Aramis's hand tighten at her waist, steadying her. His voice, private, raw, slipped into her ear. I will never be untouched again. Her heart lurched. And I? He looked at her. Truly looked. With no restraint. No mask. You and I, he whispered. The counsellor nearest them murmured, not with threat, but with resignation. Good. The line of succession is now marked. Outside the chamber, the tension changed. Not vanished, not softened, but redefined. Vexim bowed stiffly. You have won today. Aramis's expression was sharp enough to cut. No. I decided what would bleed. Today, and in the years that follow. Vexim's mouth twisted. Be careful with permanence, Lord Aramis. It has a way of becoming prophecy. Aramis inclined his head. Then let it be prophecy. I have chosen it. Vexim bowed once more before vanishing into the shadows. Only when the doors closed behind Vexim did Aramis allow the tremor in his hand. Isidora traced the blood on his shoulder, fingertips slow. You're hurt? I am, he admitted. And you drank from me. I did. And you let me give you more. His voice thickened. You offered more. He lifted her wrist and pressed his mouth to the wound his fangs had made earlier. Not to feed, to acknowledge. Heat flared between them, sharp as hunger, slow as devotion. Does it change anything? She asked. Aramis lowered his forehead to hers. Everything, he whispered. The council scribe found them in the corridor, heads together. Forgive the intrusion, my lord and lady, he murmured. This is the final record for your signatures. Isidora read the script. Permanent, witnessed, irreversible. She signed. Aramis signed. The scribe bowed. Recorded. When they were alone again, with the cliff winds pushing against the blood-glass hall, Isidora spoke without fear. What happens now? Aramis looked at her, eyes no longer silver but molten. Now we learn, he said, what permanence feels like. She threaded her fingers through his. Together, she whispered. A breath, almost a laugh, escaped him. There was never another choice.
We hope you enjoyed The Blood Debt Bride. Please like, comment, and subscribe to be notified of our next audiobook. And don't forget to take care of yourself, because we love you